the Bulls currently have a higher chance at having a top 4 pick than they do at making the playoffs. This has brought about a lot of questions from the Bulls fan base on what should this team's focus be on the back half of the season. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about injury update to Javonte Green that is even more concerning. Zach LaVine's playing his best basketball, and we're diving into the mailbag. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central. I'm the host here, Haize. Right off the top, you guys can follow me at CEO Haize, the CEO Haize. Let's get into it. So the Bulls right now have a higher chance at a lottery pick than what they do at making the playoffs. And by AK's own words, in which he said on Media Day in September that the expectation was for internal improvement. Right now, the Chicago Bulls would have to go 17-0, starting with our game on Wednesday, to reach last season's record of 46-36. And so that we all know that that's not happening. Then not only is making the playoffs a bit of an outlier and not a high probability of that, right now, we aren't even in the play-in. Now, with Indiana losing last night to the 76ers, the Bulls are back in the 11th seed right now. Game and a half back from Washington. We do not play until Wednesday, in which we play Denver, which is going to be a big test for the Chicago Bulls. But a lot of Bulls fans now have been asking, what should we be doing? Is it time to go tank? Is it time to let things play out? Should we still be fighting for a play-in spot? Should we be trying to increase our chances at keeping our own lottery pick and avoid that pick going to the Orlando Magic? And there's some, valid points in each one of those arguments, right? Each one of those things. When you look at it, the chance to quote unquote tank, right? At that point, then you are increasing your stock. You could then get a high quality player if you draft correctly that comes in if the Bulls are able to keep on to their own top 4 pick. Now, you do run the risk of not winning the lottery. At that point, then you're probably giving up a super high pick to the Orlando Magic. But at this point, the Bulls really can't worry about any other team. They have to try to improve their roster, the talent here, as best as humanly possible. So there's an argument there. Then there's an argument to be made about the team continuing to fight, show some heart, and trying to make this play-in tournament, and then seeing what happens then when the season restarts in the postseason, and can the Bulls then win the play-in tournament and at least get a playoff berth and then see how it goes there, right? I understand all aspects and ways of thinking when it comes to those things. But when it's all said and done, the way that I look at it is right now the Bulls are increasing their lottery odds by not quote-unquote tanking on purpose. So the way that I see it is that this Bulls team is still going to allow this season to come to whatever the natural conclusion of it is. And I do think there is something to be said. I want to see the team compete. I want to see the team try to give some heart regardless. And I do think even with giving that heart, I think the Bulls are still going to wind up in the lottery. Now, of course, if we lose more games than we win, it increases the number of ping pong balls that we have in the lottery and increases our chances to get a top 4 pick. But, keep in mind, look at the slim chances we had when we got Derrick Rose. I don't necessarily think at this point you have to try to tank to get there. I think you just keep playing things out. Hell, the way the roster's been playing, we're probably going to get there anyway. So, I understand every bit of the level of thinking that goes into it, like I said, but I really don't know. Like I've said, AK and Eversley need to pick a direction. Of course, getting a top 4 pick, and God forbid if the Bulls do get lucky to the point where they get the number 1 overall pick, it definitely helps the team pick that direction. But then we're still betting on Billy Donovan to be the one to develop whoever we get with that lottery pick, and that brings about its own concerns there. So when I look at it right now, yes, the Bulls do have a higher chance at winning the lottery, and let's hope that however the season ends, if the Bulls do, they're going to need some luck anyway, because there is a complete possibility the Bulls wind up with the best chance to get the number 1 overall pick or a top 4 pick, and it still does not happen. That is the nature of the draft lottery. You never know which way it's going to go. You never know who the NBA is going to decide to help and give a little extra nudge to. Conspiracy theorists here. That was a little bit of a joke. I don't know how funny it was, but it was a little bit of a joke. This season has just been tough. All jokes aside, this season's been rough. And however the season ends and comes to the conclusion, like I said, AK and Eversley, they need to do some serious work with this roster. And if that comes via having a high lottery pick, then you do maybe move some things. I really don't know. I really don't know. But it's frustrating. This season has been one of the most frustrating seasons as a Bulls fan for me. Not the most frustrating. Yes, we've had way worse seasons than this, but it's just the calamity around the Chicago Bulls organization has left much to be desired. And we'll see where the conclusion ends up coming to. It'll really inform how my draft coverage is going to be this offseason, because there's a complete chance that I don't have to do any draft coverage because the Bulls ain't got no picks. So we'll see how things go, how it works out. Now, we did get another update on Javonte Green. Basically, it's much like the Lonzo Ball thing. Not as severe, but he's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. Keep in mind, we have like 5 weeks left in the season, maybe a little bit under that. I've said this before. Javonte Green is not coming back this season. And the biggest question is what for the Bulls left is, what does this mean for his offseason? What does this mean for his free agency? Does this help the Bulls retain him if they choose and want to do so? Those are the biggest questions I think looking at Javonte that, surrounding it means to me. But I mean, personally, the way I feel and the way that I'm looking at it is that, it kind of more fits in line with how the season is gone if he does not return. And so it sucks. I would love to see Javonte Green back out there for a playoff push run, whatever you want to call it, just to end the season and give us some excitement. But all signs, and as we know with the Chicago Bulls organization, when they start saying things like reevaluated in 2 weeks, it hasn't made much movement, there hasn't been much improvement. Listen, I'm fully expecting in 2 weeks for AK to get out there and be like, yes, we're shutting down Javonte Green for the rest of the season. That's what I'm personally expecting. I would love to be proven wrong on that. This is one of those things where if this comes in and he proves my statement and my concern that he's not going to play at all this season, I would love to see that. I would love to see Javonte Green back out there. And I do hope for his career, whether it is here with Chicago or goes on with another team, I would absolutely love to see Javonte Green just continue to do his thing, man. So, prayers up to him. Let's hope that the improvement continues for him and he does, can come back maybe 2 weeks left in the season, maybe for a play-in push if we get there, because I would love to see Javonte Green on the court for the Chicago Bulls. Now, next up, we're going to talk about Zach LaVine. He's been playing the best basketball of the season. Post All-Star break, he is averaging 31 points per game. He's doing so on 57% shooting from the field, 51% shooting from three-point range. He's 90% in free throw range. He is the 50-40-90 player, really 50-50-90, which is back to that elite level of offense. 50-40-90, for those that don't know, if you can average 50% shooting from the field, 40% shooting from three-point range, 90% shooting from free throw range, and you're a high-volume player on top of that, that is a sign of elite offensive player. Also, he's throwing in 3 rebounds a game, about 3 assists per game, a half a block per game, a half a steal per game, and he's only averaging 2 turnovers a game. Now, we do need to see that late, but that is since the All-Star break. If you look at his numbers pre-All-Star break, he was averaging 24 points per game, so that's a 7-point increase. He was also shooting 46% from the field, so 10 percentage points above that. He was shooting 36% from three-point range, so he's now shooting 51%, an increase there as well. We're seeing Zach LaVine increase every aspect of his game. Now, his assist numbers are down. He was averaging 4.1 assists prior to the All-Star break. He's averaging 2.8 now, but that goes in with having an actual point guard in Pat Bev, who has said he doesn't want to see Zach pass. He wants to see Zach score. So, this has brought about the questions, is like the signs that you're seeing from Zach LaVine, is this enough to show again that he is now the de facto number one on this team? And I would say that in this time, the Bulls right now, since Zach LaVine has been playing, yes, they've been playing with a better pace. They've been playing they've been scoring more. Keep in mind, the Bulls have been early in the season, according to numbers, a really great defense with a piss poor offense. The Chicago Bulls have scored 122, 104, and 115 points in their last 3 games. Now, of course, in that games, they've given up 125 each of the last 2 games, so there's definitely some concern there. But at the end of the day, with Zach LaVine being the more aggressive and dominant version of himself and efficient, that becomes the thing. It's efficiency with Zach LaVine. We know he can go out and score. We know you can put the ball in his hands and expect him to do some things. But one of the biggest things always with Zach LaVine is the efficiency. You have to be an efficient offensive player, especially when you're not necessarily the best defensive player. Not necessarily. He's not the best defensive player. So you have to be locked in those areas. And you have to be an efficient shooting player. when you're not necessarily a lockdown defender, and Zach LaVine has been that. Now, it has not translated to wins, and you now see everybody quoting the article that came out as far as Zach and Vooch having the lowest win percentage. They both have been on terrible teams, not necessarily holding that 100% against them. But as we know, Zach LaVine is not the type of player that you can build a championship team around with him being a 1. He's just not. He's a 2A level player in a high 2 level A, but you have to have a high IQ team around him, and you then probably have to have at least one other player better than Zach LaVine and probably a player as good as Zach LaVine as well on that roster to really try to build the best roster possible with Zach LaVine being on it. And Zach has come under criticism, rightfully so, after signing the biggest deal in franchise history. And he's come out this season, at least to start the season, he was not the efficient player. He was playing bad. The basketball IQ moments in the fourth quarter, the costing the Bulls games, the not smart decisions, all those things were there, and he rightfully got critiqued for it. Now, Zach LaVine is playing some of his best basketball. And the way that I look at it is this. If you're going to keep Zach LaVine on this team, it is now showing you have to have a high-level point guard next to him. You have to. And so in this offseason, in what AK and Eversley, whatever they do, they have to be looking, if Lonzo Ball is not coming back, to bring in a high-level point guard to help manage Zach LaVine. You have to. And so as this team goes forward into this offseason, regardless of what the conclusion of this season is, that needs to be one of the things high on the board of AK and Eversley to address in this year's offseason. And if you don't do that, and, shout out to, and hopefully Zach LaVine also, he goes into the offseason having a healthy offseason so he can work on his game and things like that and not be doing rehab, surgery, recovery, and things like that. But Zach LaVine has stepped up in a big way. I just wish that it was coming via wins, and it's not. And so, you have to look at those things. You have to evaluate those things, and we'll see what the Chicago Bulls front office does. But I do want to commend Zach LaVine for being a better version of himself. That is what he got paid for. Despite, I know some Bulls fans are going to say, well, we're paying him for $40 million. You need to be this. You need to be that. They paid him for what he did. They paid him for the efficient player that he showed himself that he could be. He's getting back to that. Let's hope he finishes the season strong, rides that momentum into the offseason. And if we can get this version of Zach LaVine to start off next season and to maintain for a full season, the Bulls are going to be in a much better place. You still got to change a lot of things on the roster. Now, talking about things not being utilized on this roster correctly, we got to talk about Marko Simonovic. And Daniel Greenberg has been tweeting this out, and I've been loving it. So, Marko Simonovic, in his last 2 G League games, he had 16 points and 13 rebounds, 5 of those being offensive rebounds. In his last game, last night, he had 26 points, 21 rebounds, and 10 of those being offensive rebounds. Now, as we know, everything does not translate 1-for-1 in the G League play. But when you have a team that you cut Goran Dragic, and then you signed another point guard that you immediately then sent down to the G League, and we have Marko Simonovic, who has been, and rightfully so, Bulls fans have been asking, what's the plan with Marko, right? At this point, especially at where we are in the season, I would much rather the Bulls play him. Even if he gets rebounds and gets blown up on defense, you then know what you need to do. Cut his ass. Do something, right? You have this player that is taking up a guaranteed roster spot because he's not on a 2-way deal. And yes, his deal is partially guaranteed next season. Technically, the Bulls can get out from under that. I don't necessarily see that coming from AK. AK is a guy who likes to give his rookies their full-time term of their contract. But I think when we look at what Marko Simonovic is doing in the G League and what he has done, it's proven he's not going to learn anything else from the G League. Throw his ass out there. We need some size. We need some shooting. We need offensive rebounding. He brings all of that. Yes, he's going to get exposed on defense, but how do you expect him to grow if you do see a future with him if you're not allowing him to go through those experiences of NBA defense? He's not going to learn anything playing G League defense. NBA defense is what he needs to play in. And if they're not going to have him on the roster next season, getting actual minutes, even if it's 8 minutes a game, send his ass away. And that's not to say that Marko still doesn't have some potential at the NBA level. There are players, I tell you what, there are players that are getting minutes in the NBA this season that's defense is just as bad as Marko Simonovic, but they don't have the scoring and rebounding upside as he does either. That's something you need to look at. And it just, again, it highlights the fact that this Bulls franchise, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's the front office, whatever it is, their development planning for these young players that you bring into this roster has been piss poor. For the last 2-3 years almost, you have to improve this. You have to come up with something and show us some. Stop giving contracts to people who you're not going to play. Stop giving contracts to people who have skill sets that we theoretically need that you're not going to put in the game. Stop giving contracts to people who you sign and then they just disappear. They wither away in the G League. What is the point? He is on a guaranteed contract, but we treat him and play him as if he's on a G League contract and not an actual NBA deal. Fix it. We have to be better about the way that we use our contracts in this franchise. You already have an ownership group that doesn't allow you the leeway to go into the luxury tax. Why are we wasting contracts for people you ain't going to play? Let's figure that out as we go forth in this offseason and into the next season. Okay, since we're in the down period, one of the longest down periods after the All-Star break, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to dive into the mailbag during the week today. We're going to get this first one in. This one's from Andre.
What's up, Haize? How you doing? My name is Andre. I just been a big fan of your podcast or your YouTube channel, and I just want to call in and give you something that I've been thinking about recently. So obviously the Bulls going to have to go in a different direction in terms of roster construction, and obviously DeMar DeRozan is probably going to be our biggest trick that we can trade. I was thinking about doing this trade right here, sending DeMar DeRozan to Toronto, send him back home. He'll be in the final year of his contract, and he can end his career possibly where it all started. Send them to Toronto for OG Anunoby and also Thaddeus Young. The reason why I would want to do that trade, maybe even possibly a second-round pick, given the value of DeMar DeRozan. But OG Anunoby, to me, him and Patrick Williams can be interchangeable as starting forwards in the NBA. Yes, we will lose some of that offensive firepower that DeMar DeRozan brings as a shot creator. But I think what the Bulls have to do is, with the assumption that Patrick Williams will continue to ascend, you got two wings that are about 6'7", 6'8", that are both two-way players. We would have to be able to turn defense into offense. And OG Anunoby is in the final year of his contract. He's a better version of Patrick Williams now, but a little more mature offensively. He's also leading the league in steals. So you get him, you get Patrick. You got two 6'7", 6'8" forwards that are interchangeable, that can play both, offense and defense, can space the floor better than you could with DeMar DeRozan, and also they can attack the rim, they can run in transition. So we'd have to be able to turn defense to offense, and that's the thinking that I have with that trade. And also you get back Thaddeus Young, a Bulls veteran, good friend of Zach LaVine, so he can give us some depth off the bench from the forward spot, because right now we clearly have problems, and it seems like we're playing four guards in the center more often than not. So in certain matchups, Thaddeus Young still has something left in the tank. He can give us a solid veteran on the bench, plays winning basketball, and I think that will be a good trade for us going forward. We probably can get a better package, but I'm thinking the potential of OG Anunoby and Patrick Williams as forwards for the next 4 or 5 years will be a good starting point. It's a good jumping point for the Bulls to go in the right direction going forward. That's all I got. Go Bulls and see Ravens.
All right, and Andre comes up with something that I've seen around before. Sending DeMar back to Toronto, OG Anunoby, Thad Young, those would be some players that I'd be highly interested in bringing into this team. The issue that I come with this, and this is always what I say when people bring up DeMar going back to Toronto, I don't think Toronto wants him back. I don't think that I've seen something that, you see the thing where players on the end of their, like, for example, the Dwayne Wade. When we traded Dwayne Wade to Cleveland and then Cleveland cut him, everybody knew he was going back to Miami. They wanted to reconcile. He went back to Miami. He missed being there. He ended up finishing his career there. Right? D'Angelo Russell gets traded back to LA. Don't know necessarily Lakers fans were clamoring for D'Angelo Russell to come back, but he went back there, right? I don't think Toronto wants DeMar DeRozan back. Outside of their fan base, but I don't think that organization wants to go back there. I think they're forging forward, and I think they're actually trying to rid themselves of some things for the past. But again, that's my personal opinion. We don't know that. I don't interview GM, so I can't tell that for sure. But to your trade, this is a great trade idea. I would love bringing OG Anunoby back, especially OG, somebody who you look at, he's versatile. 6'7", 232 pounds, He's averaging 16 points per game with 5 rebounds, 2 assists on 45% shooting. This is the only season of OG Anunoby's career. He's only 25 years old as well. He fits that timeline, but this is the only season of his career he did not up his point per game average over the season prior. We know they've been dealing with some issues and things down there, so it makes sense. If OG Anunoby is available, and if you can facilitate that deal happening via sending DeMar back to Toronto, you make that happen just for that player, much less the Thad Young of it all. If you can get OG Anunoby this offseason, not only does this fit the roster that AK wants to build, AK loves players with the semi-tall players with long wingspans that can play, that are versatile in positions that they can play. You look at Dalen, you look at Io, you look at Patrick Williams, they're all that, right? And OG Anunoby comes in as a player that's proven and able to be a solid role player in that high-level role player, because he's not a star-level player that can come in and ball out and fits the Chicago Bulls timeline. All those things will be great for the Chicago Bulls, and that is probably why it's not going to happen, because things that seem and would work out for the Bulls seem to never happen for this organization. But I tell you what, I love your mindset. I love the turning defense into offense. That is what this team's identity, I think, theoretically should and would be if AK had the perfect roster that he wants, that he envisions. I think that's what we see him drafting as. I would love to see that type of roster here in Chicago. Like I said, though, I just don't know if that happens, because I doubt Toronto wants DeMar DeRozan back. But hey, I could be wrong on that, and we'll see what happens in this offseason. Thanks for the voicemail, Andre. Let's get into this next one. This one's from Michael Korn.
Hey, Haize, Mike Korn here. How you doing? The reason I love your show is you remain joyful in spite of just how fucking brutal the Bulls are. Sorry for expressing myself with the swear words, but I like the Bulls players. I mean, I have some issues with some of the, each of their games, etc. But as people, man, and just as players, I like them. But how can you not adjust? There's no fucking reason why the Bulls as athletes aren't like shooting more threes. I mean, it's just fucking unbelievable at this point. And what's crazy about it is the coach to the front office. It's kind of like their answers are just so empty. You know, it's like, come on, man, these are athletes. Like, and I'm 67 years old. I still try to run full court. At least I did last summer. We'll see how this summer goes. But in any form of basketball, and to compete, you change your game if it's not working. How fucking hard is that? That just, again, sorry for the profanity, but my kids are all adults now, so I guess I shouldn't be that worried about it. But in any case, man, keep up the job, as brutal as this season is. We'll keep listening. At this point, after the All-Star break, I was okay, I want to see the Bulls win, not tank. I don't know what the percentages are. Hell, at this point, let them get have a small possibility. Go for the odds in getting like a top 4 player out of school or out of the G, from wherever. But it's disgusting. That's just adjust your game and shooting more, the rebounding. I'm sorry, I know you've stuck up for Vooch, saying he's been our most consistent player, but man, he's soft too. I'm tired of just like, we get even a game against Phoenix, the guy with the beaver haircut who was, subbing for DeAndre. He was manhandling Vooch and the Bulls. This has got to stop, man. Anyway, thanks for letting me rant. We'll talk and, keep listening, man, and, keep watching. I don't know about, but at least I'll keep listening. Hey, talk to you later. Have a great week.
Michael Korn hitting on what's frustrating us all. The lack of three-point shooting. This is a league that has, right or wrong, whether we agree with it or disagree with it, the league has gone to a heavy three-point shooting league. And when you see the teams that run the most successful offense, they're high-volume three-point shooting teams. And it's just math. The Bulls are being defeated by just simple math, right? With their inability to shoot threes and make threes at a high level when other teams are. It's just math. And it's killing the Chicago Bulls. And, to Michael's point, at some point you have to adjust your roster to match up with or you have to be extremely elite in everything else that you do. Meaning, and as I said, the Bulls have to be an extremely elite defensive team if they're not going to shoot three-pointers to match what the other teams are doing. Zach LaVine said it. He was quoted after the game before, just saying how tough it is when you're hitting twos instead of threes. They don't have a lot of high-volume three-point shooters on this team. Shout out to DeMar, did take more threes than the last game, but I don't think he made a single one of them. So it's not even as simple as just taking more threes for certain players. There's some players just don't have that skill set. We'll see who adds it to their game and things like that. The lack of adjustment overall, that is a Billy Donovan thing. And we don't make the necessary adjustments that we need to do in some games. We just don't do it consistently. And so it's definitely those things are hurting the Bulls. They have been hurting the Bulls. They're going to continue to hurt the Bulls, especially this season. We'll see next season. I don't have much faith in Billy Donovan adjusting his game, but I could be wrong. And if I am wrong, I'll be right here and I'll say it and we'll see what happens. But as of right now, Billy Donovan hasn't given much room for hope that he's going to change the way that he plays and coaches and the lack of adjustments that are there. That's my thoughts. You guys can let me know what you think on everything down below. Thank you for tuning in to the channel. Make sure you're following us at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and a voicemail like you heard on today's episode, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.